And now, ladies and gentlemen, Gerard Assayag. He has founded and currently is the head of the music representation group at IRCAM. And you have dived into the so-called machine musicianship. And I think we will hear about that later. And you have made numerous of publications and successful technologies, as the one that we will have a demonstration of right now, SOMAX 2 is the name. Yeah. And in an international context, you are developing the theory and the tools of artificial creative intelligence in music. And how does it sound? That is the question. Welcome Gerard and guitarist Telemachos Moussas.
Who is somewhere.
Give their hands. Your hands.
Okay, good afternoon. So I'm Gerard Assayag from IRCAM. IRCAM is a research center and a music production center created by famous composer and conductor Pierre Boulez in the 70s. And I'm head of a project called REACH, which is about co-creativity, and I will explain what I mean by co-creativity and symbolic interaction. But first we will go through a little bit of history, a few historical milestones about this idea of artificial or computational creativity, just to show that in a meeting like this one, we are all very stressed and anxious because of all the social and political issues related to AI. But there's something that maybe we forget, is that we just get what we deserve, because what's happening now with AI is something that humanity has been dreaming of for like 3,000 years. Humanity has been longing for this, and I will show it through a few historical examples. Humanity has been dreaming for a very, very long time about the idea of computing the world, computing the reality. Why? Maybe it's a mystery, maybe it's mysterious, but the fact is there, and now it's happening. So maybe we should cheer it, or maybe we should be afraid of it, but it is something that we have wanted, and that is happening now. So here is a novel from the 19th century by Villiers de l'Isle-Adam, French novelist, called L'Eve Future, who coined the word android. It was the first time that the word android appeared in literature. He was trying to imagine a robot, an android, that would be gifted with a consciousness and the ability to speak and sing and do music and whatever. And he was trying to imagine this with the technology of the time, mid-19th century. So, for instance, if I read a little piece of this ribbon, here are the two golden phonographs. Blah, 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 blah. So she has phonographs inside her body. A single thin ribbon can hold 7 hours of her words. So they are recording of words. And the android is kind of recombining parts of this recording to create new language. This is ChatGPT, but in the 19th century. It could be a Ukraina, you see. So it's an old dream. Even older than that, Descartes. Let's read this letter from Descartes to Father Mersenne. He was trying to invent the universal philosophical language where you could compute any possible intellectual idea, the language that would be able to generate any possible idea. And because he was a scientific person, he was trying to do this with the help of computation. He says, for instance, by establishing an order among all the thoughts that can enter the human mind, just as there is one naturally established among numbers. So the same way we can enumerate numbers by just learning the algorithm, not learning by heart all the infinite number of numbers, we could do this with a language that would be wisely designed to be able to generate any possible idea. So this is AI and this is computation, avant la lettre, in a way. what he dreamt of, Leibniz did it, because exactly with the same purpose, Leibniz invented what he called the universal characteristic, which is nothing else than the binary language used today in the computers. And he found that that was the optimal language that would be able to encode any possible information. So this was also information theory a few centuries before it was actually invented. And of course, in this very fertile 17th century, many people, philosophers and mathematicians, tried to invent music machines that would be able to create and compose music, that the Arca Musica by Kircher and the theoretical one by Mersenne, Harmonie universelle. So, today we have computers, and computers are based on artificial languages, programming languages. This is exactly what was envisioned by these great thinkers. And programming languages that we use for programming AI, all the demo that you have seen, they are performative. That is, what they say, they do it. When you program a programming language, you write sentences in this language, and the single fact that you write them and that the computer runs them create a new reality. So it is a bit like this word mills in the Tibetan religion, where you have these mills with mantras, and you have to turn them and turn them and turn them, because it will generate all the prayers, and then it will make the world better. So will AI make the world better? I don't know. So these computers and the programming languages and AI algorithms, they are in turn capable of inventing new languages, such as images of music. This is what we see, every day. And this was envisioned again in the 19th century with the precursor of the computer, the difference engine by Charles Babbage, but specifically by Lady Ada Lovelace, who the daughter of Lord Byron, who worked with Charles Babbage. She invented the first computer algorithm to compute the Bernoulli numbers. We should not forget that the very first computer program was written by a woman, and she said that eventually, in the future, the machine, I quote, could scientifically and elaborately compose pieces of music of any length or degree of complexity. And here we are. So now we make a big jump, and many people are doing researches and developing, designing software, etc. And I will talk a little bit about what I am doing personally. So I invented this language called Open Music quite a while ago at IRCAM. It was a visual programming language for composers. So the composer could use them in order to design new musical ID, harmony, rhythm, melody, textures, and experiment with this ID until they get pieces of score that they could use as material for their composition. Just to finish with the historical background, I will say that there have been 4 important moments, at least in the Western history, because if we study now the Western and Eastern, it becomes even more complicated. So for now, I just focus on that. Of course, the Greek moment with the legacy of Pythagoras and all these people. Then the combinatorial moment with Leibniz and all these people in the 17th century. They saw the world as a machine. And they thought that the machine, the monad and all this stuff, was a combinatorial machine that could generate whatever thing that could be imagined by the human people. So nothing new under the sun. This is what ChatGPT does. Then the logical moment, 19th and early 20th century, now the logic of calculation and the calculation of logic becomes prominent, and these are the foundation of computer science. And since that very moment, people think about music. Since the very beginning of computer science, people are fascinated about music. And then we are now in what I would call the biological moment, because we are inspired by biological structures. The neural networks, who are at the basis of deep learning and the AI that you all know, is a biological model. It's a cognitive and biological model that was invented quite a while ago, but exploded in the last 10, 15 years. So music computing, this is what we are talking about, and we will make performance with a music computing system. Music computing is the synthesis of this moment, from an acoustic signal to a formal structure, a medium for sensation and emotion, and a complex system at the heart of human interaction, which creative AI will take on. So in 1958 in Paris, a group of musicians called Groupe de Musique Algorithmique invented the so-called algorithmic music. So again, the old dream of computing music around Pierre Barbeau. And some people have forgotten that actually the computer system was written by another woman, Jeanne Charbonnier. So let's not forget Jeanne Charbonnier, because every people in France talks about Pierre Barbeau, of course. And they organized a concert in 1958. We can hear a little bit of it. Okay, so it is played by an actual orchestra. So the computer was generating listings, paper listings with notes encoded, and then they would transcribe into scores, and then they would give scores to the performers, and the performers would play the piece. But closer to us, in the 80s, well-known rock star Frank Zappa got a Grammy Award for a record named Jazz from Hell that he entirely programmed with the Synclavier 2, which was the first programmable computer music workstation equipped with a programming language that you could use in order to create sound synthesis and music structures. And it's interesting to listen to this quite a few years later. Not bad. And for every single note of this kind of jazz rock texture, he had to actually program the computer to give the computer an algorithmic reason to generate that note. So this is not very well known that people from the pop and the rock domain were very excited in the 70s and the 80s about all these new technologies, which were not yet based on AI, but which was already based on the idea of algorithmically generating some music, which is not a very different idea if you come to think to it. So now I came to IRCAM and I created the program that you saw, Open Music, and a few years later, I wondered how I could create a system that could play live with musicians, because Open Music was not live, it was a system for designing music. How could an intelligent system be smart enough to be embarked in a live session, listen to musicians, understand what the musicians are doing rhythmically, harmonically, melodically, and after being trained on some musical materials and some musical corpus, be able to react to the musician in a way that would be actually interesting for the musician. So the idea here, and this is why we call it co-creativity, was to go beyond the idea of computational creativity, create an algorithm that would generate something that could be interesting, not interesting, but actually we don't really know, because we don't know, as has been said a lot yesterday and today, we don't really know what's behind, we don't really know what is the subject behind. The idea would be rather, let me explain this. So machines can certainly execute algorithms and demonstrate some autonomy. But are they creative? Can we attribute this quality to complex systems that are not reflexive subjects and conscious beings? It's a philosophical question. And it could be also constitute what is called in philosophy aporia, something that you cannot really solve. For Margaret Boden, creativity is the ability to come up with new, surprising, and valuable ideas or artifacts. So it can take three forms. Combinatorial, we have seen it, as old as the 17th century. Exploratory, when you have a certain mind map, mindset, and trying to find new ways, new paths, but the mind map is always the same. And then transformative, when the mind map is transformed, and then you actually think the unthinkable. What was unthinkable because before the map was totally transformed. Okay. But okay, this is the human, but how can you bring this into machines? So, when interactions are created between complex systems, such as humans, machines, we observe more than just the addition of behavior. Machines does that, human does that, and then you add up. No, you have a phenomenon called emergence in complex systems, something new that pops up. The joint sounds that are formed are unpredictable. Sometimes they are rich, sometimes they are inspiring from the musician. So it is a case where the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts, which is a characteristic of complex system that you find in life, in biology. This is how the cell works, you know. And so the whole has its own dynamics that cannot be explained by looking separately to what the computer does, what the human does. Something new appears and pops up. And it is a biological model. So this is what we have tried to put into the machine when we have designed the software called SOMAX. So something is going to occur between the musician playing and the machine playing, something that we could call co-evolution, because both listen one to the other. The machine listens to the musician and learns from the musician and adapts and produces. But then the reverse is true, because the musician, of course, listens to the music's production. So it changes the way it plays. But then the machine is listening, so it changes the way the machine is learning, what the musician is playing, etc., etc., etc. And this is why it is a complex system that goes exponentially to something that sometimes, you know, is surprising and interesting. Not always, but sometimes. And, okay. So this dynamics of complex system typically creates the alternations of order or chaos, continuous evolution or violent ruptures, agreement, disagreement, which is what you find normally in improvisation, in general, even normal, usual human improvisation. And it is precisely this complex dynamic of creation that we call co-creativity, with the idea that it is in the interaction that is the interest, not in the separate part. So nothing happens if the musician does not play, because there's no interaction. So the musician is the center. And this is how we want to design AI now, in a way that the musician is in the center. The musician is not something that is put on the side from which we steal music. No, no, not at all. We conceive AI as an extension of the musician that, in the first place, interests and stimulates the musician's creativity. So I will not go into many theoretical details, and we will show it with actual music and performance, but just to give an idea of the architecture, you must have a listening machine, because the machine must be able to listen to the musician. I don't go into the scientific details, but the machine must be able to understand pitch, texture, rhythm, etc., etc. It must learn, it's going to learn a certain model and create a musical memory from which it will draw material to play in its turn. And this memory model, when you do it with technologies such as deep learning or neural networks, it creates what is called a latent space. A latent space is a space where all the data that you have learned and collected is compressed into a very efficient and optimal representation. And it is in this space that the AI algorithm goes and takes new ideas. So in a way, the latent space is the imagination of the machine, so to speak. Then you must have an interaction module that knows how to query the learning model and the memory model and the latent space in order to be able to find matches between what the musician is doing live in real time and what has been learned by the systems. And then you have all these feedback loops now coming into play. So I will not give too many technical details. This is the software, SOMAX 2. Actually, this is the latest version that is just out. It's an open source software that you can just download from GitHub or from the IRCAM website and play with it. Many people do it, and it's not difficult. There are many tutorials and documentation or whatever you would need. So before we play, maybe a video example of a session using this software with a flutist who is here. You will hear the flutist play, and the system has been trained on material recorded by the same flutist. Right? So it will answer with the same sound, but trying to set up a dialogue and a co-improvisation. In the first half, the co-improvisation is free, so flutist play and the computer plays. In the second half, the computer listens more carefully to the flutist, try to understand the extended techniques that the flutist is using. For instance, is the flutist doing trills? Is the flutist doing Flatterzung? Is the flutist singing into the instrument? So the listening machine can understand that and decode it and then try to go in the same direction. So just to show that it understands it, it's more a demo than a concert, of course. So let's see what it does in the first place. So this is the flutist. And so Max is answering. I will go a bit further. And now, second session where Somax actually tries to understand the extended techniques by the flutist and go in the similar direction. So it's going to be more mimetic in a way. So they are both playing with key clicks right now. Now both playing with fast traits. But not the same. They're improvising. They're doing music together. They're co-creating. Multiphonics, both doing multiphonics. Okay, so this is an interesting example that shows both the listening machine and the learning and reactive and interaction machine that tries to find interesting correspondences between what the musician is doing and what the machine is doing. And this is what we're going to do now, playing real music. So this is going to be a full improvisation. We have not rehearsed. We have not seen each other for many months. We have just set up, tried a few sounds, and then we're going. And we see where this leads us. So this is the game. No preparation, and see if something can emerge and crystallize between machine and... Oh, but the machine is generative, so it's going to play by itself, but you are going to see me changing things. So from time to time, I change a parameter, and what do? For instance, I can decide if I show Somax here. You can see it here. So every column here is an agent or a player. It's an independent agent that can play by itself and listen to the musician. And the agents, they can also listen one to the other, so in order to create kind of a coherence when they play polyphonically. I can decide to start and stop an agent. So this is not a decision that the machine does. It's not intelligent enough. It can play if I tell it to play. It's not intelligent enough to decide that now it's time to stop and be silent. So this is a human decision. So I am actually acting as a musician and as an improviser myself. I can change a parameter to make the machine more reactive or less reactive, with more inertia or more flexible. And these are expressivity decisions that I take. But between two decisions, the machine is totally autonomous and generative. So let's see what we can do. So let me... activate the sound here. Listen to channel 1, which is Telemachos. So Telemachos Moussas, my great friend and guitarist, is going to play with me. Settings, this is good. Okay. Then we have this enable. So now I am enabling this player here. So the first part of the performance will be done by this player, and then maybe we'll activate some other players. Channel 2, let's see. Voila. Do we have some sound? We have sound. Do we have some sound? We have sound. So it should be ready to go. Maybe we try.